Now, I'm really pleased to say this is a bit like I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, when you have a surprise guest, I think, dropping into the jungle, because we didn't think this speaker would be able to make it this morning, but delighted to say that Craig Suckling has managed to make it here this morning. So Craig, who is the Chief Data Officer of the UK government, is going to give us some opening words now as well. Over to you, Craig.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. I'm sorry I'm late. I've been on a train for 3 hours, silently seething trying to get here, and I'm glad I was able to sneak in at some point. I'm sure there is a data application that could solve some of the infamous signal failures that we hear about on trains. But thank you for the chance to be able to meet and speak with me this morning. I wanted to share a little bit about how we can really start to drive major innovation, major impact with modern data today. And you would have heard from Sarah Munby this morning about the big ambition we have in government and public sector to do more with data. I'm going to very much build on that. As was just said, my role is UK Government Chief Data Officer. I sit within our Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. And my focus is very much around helping to drive transformation and strategy with data across public sector, but also on how we can use the really valuable, really attractive public sector data assets that we have to help to drive economic growth, to help to drive innovation into the economy as well. So I'm going to talk a bit about that today. And I have been tasked to do this in a shorter time than I'd planned, which is my punishment for being late. So let's see how we go. But I really hope we can get through some of this messaging within the right time frame. I am a convict that our public sector data is the most underutilized but most highly valued asset that we have. Call me biased, but I really think we have a huge amount of value that we can unlock with our data. And it really goes across three things. The first is that we have significant opportunity to deliver on economic growth. If we can unlock our public sector data assets, we can drive more job creation. We can safeguard our nation with resilience with data. We can also transform public sector services. And the more that we can deliver data in close proximity to those services that require to be data-driven, the more we can deliver really fantastic experiences for the citizens and the businesses of our nation. And finally, we can really draw on better collaboration and productivity across the government and across public sector if we share more on data. Time and time again, we find that data sharing is the number one impediment to cross-government collaboration and productivity. And the more we can unlock sharing, the more we can be successful in driving gains in how we collaborate and create better uniform experiences for our users across government. What would that look like in the future as well? If we were to really be a transformed government experience, one that would be customer-focused, data-driven, AI-enabled, I had to think about some of the attributes. And for me, these are some of the examples I'd love to see come to life. Imagine having a singular experience. If you're a new parent who's just had a child, can you opt into a life event where you have been able to register the birth, you are able to sign up for childcare and educational resources without having to go to many different departments, having a singular experience? Can it be proactive? If you chose to opt in for a self-assessment on tax as a reminder, would you be able to get that reminder ahead of time, log in, find that your self-assessment is pre-populated with HMRC and third-party data, and you can just review it and submit it? It would be great. If you were a person living with disability, you'd want to have consistent experience with the government. You'd want to have an understanding and an acknowledgement of your needs, regardless of who you interface with, whether it be health, housing, DVLA, or welfare. And finally, it has to be deeply trusting. All of our data flows through government, and so we need to have the ability to view our profile, to be able to opt in and out of services, and to determine how our data is used. So a future data-driven experience with government should have these attributes. I'm sure there are others we can think of as well, but for me, these are some that are critical and some of the things I think of as a North Star vision that we need to strive towards having. But there are challenges, and we know that we need to take a whole-of-system approach to creating change across the system. We need to think about how we shift mindset and adjust some of the culture across government as well. That includes us thinking firstly about our users, the businesses and the citizens, and their priority needs, to work backwards to help to deliver on the right data solutions. It includes us thinking more broadly than just the silos of our departments to really think about how we should collaborate across departments to create really good experiences with data. It includes us having more of a risk appetite, taking calculated risks more readily so we can test and learn and deliver value quickly, gather feedback to inform how we go forward. So we need to think differently about culture. We need to think differently about incentives as well. And when we think about incentives, we need to think about how do we create mechanisms to incent data sharing? How do we incentivize us all to want to be more readily available to share on data, to share on the risk, to share on the value, to share on trust as well? And that includes us having strong, sponsorship and executive support from ministers downwards to do more with data, more cohesively. It also requires us strengthening legislation and policy. But it requires us working bottom up as well with teams to talk about how we can do things differently and show the value. We need to think about skills. Skills are changing a lot right now. How do we make sure that we are all encouraging and are able to start to adopt new skills in AI, in machine learning and data science in general? And how do we start to create better grassroots skills uptake as well? We recently launched Tech Track, which I hope a lot of you have seen. And we've had over 10,000 applicants for apprenticeships into government as part of the Tech Track apprenticeship scheme, which is a great result. But we also need the non-technical people to be more data savvy, and we need to start to grow data literacy across public sector as well. When we think about technology, we have to build technology that can keep pace with the changing pace of this world. So our technology needs to be interoperable, it has to be scalable, it has to be flexible as we build these things. And we have to have trust embedded in everything. We have to have transparency and ethics and open discourse with the public as we start to build more with data. And finally, we have to have coordination. We need to be able to collaborate together on common goals. I think a mission-based government really helps us to think about that more broadly as well. And so these are things to me that I think we have to tackle and overcome if we're going to really unlock the change. And for me, I think some of the opportunity is we can really start to create what I like to call an ecosystem of innovation with data. When I think about data, and I said it earlier, there is so much rich data we have across the public sector. It's more than just our structured or essential shared data assets. We should be thinking about how we can create better event-driven data for things like Tell Me Once. We should be thinking about all of the unstructured data that we have across government. I was at the National Archives a couple of months ago, and they have 800 years of unstructured data, hugely valuable, that we could leverage more for AI and applications like that. As we start to ramp up more on algorithms, we should be looking to share those across teams as well, rather than having fragmentation with AI. And we need to think more about third-party data. How do we create better uniformity in use? Things like geospatial data, so that we have a common way of thinking and using that third-party data across government. The reason why all this data is important is because we need to unlock it to better serve the people and the businesses of the UK. And that's more than just unlocking it across the civil service. That is collaborating with local authorities, with public corporations, with academia and industry and international partners. If we can do more of this, we can deliver amazing services, we can deliver on better productivity across the civil service, we can create better policy development, we can create more resilience in the system, we can create more proactive research and planning, and we can deliver better industry and economic growth. So there's a lot of benefit out there, and we just need to really be focused on having a big common vision, but really focusing on priority areas to deliver on value collectively as well. I want to talk about AI for a bit. I'd be amiss if I didn't, right? No data, no AI. I think that if we take the rocket ship analogy to AI, you can think of AI applications as the payload. All of the fuel, all of the engines is the data. And just like in a rocket ship, raw fuel is not going to get you very far. You need to refine it. It needs to be harnessed and contained and put into the right containers to actually drive the propellant that you need to actually lift off the rocket. It's the same with data. We have so much rich data, but we need to really focus on how do we create the right foundations that unlocks that data and makes it really well accessible with the right quality, the right ethics, the right removal of bias, and the right security. And then how do we exchange on it really readily? How do we make sure that there is open exchange across the system so that we can create the right data applications, the right data activation layer? And when I talk about data activation layer, this is creating those stores of data that are in the right format, in the right place, at the right time for AI applications to use them as well. So data is really important to AI, and if you don't have your data mothership in order, you can't launch the rocket, right? It's more than just technology as well, though, and so we need to also continue to think about culture. I spoke about collective vision. We all need to think about what does good look like here. We need to stay outcome-focused, focusing on problems we can solve, and we have to engage community as we go and really learn from each other as we continue to develop more in AI. It's really important for us to have cross-functional teams. When we think about building data in AI, we have to bring data engineers and data scientists together, but we also need to bring researchers and policymakers and ethicists and security and legal people together to have robust diversity of thought as we think about these applications. And when we think about policy, if we're going to scale AI broadly, we need to have uniformity in how we think about the standards for security, ethics, privacy, and quality that everybody should apply, and do that independently across the system as well. So a bright future with AI, huge potential and value, but we really need to think about this as a whole system challenge to get right. There's many facets to it if we're going to really drive AI valuably across the system. A couple of examples. The Department for Works and Pension is doing a really good job of delivering on benefit already. They've developed a system called their white male AI technology system, and forgiving the name, it's focused on really driving benefits to those most in need. They receive about 22,000 letters each day from people needing assistance and benefits, and it used to take them 2 weeks to get through all of that. With AI and with data, they've been able to deliver automatic detection of sentiment, to be able to understand people who are most in need, and they've taken the process from 2 weeks down to a day to be able to get attention and help to those most in need the fastest. And so great examples of where progress has already been made, combining data and AI. I'll give you a second really quick. Redbox Copilot in the Cabinet Office is doing some great work on bringing Gen AI to how the civil service works. They've taken thousands of documents. They've been able to interrogate and summarize those into tailored briefings for private officers in the Cabinet Office so that they can augment and accelerate what it means to do briefings for ministers ahead of time. And again, it's a great story of taking so much great unstructured data, bringing that together with AI to drive really good benefit. And the Redbox Copilot is continuing to scale across the civil service as a great tool to start to augment some of that briefing process, which I'm sure we've all been through and have seen the pain of repetition and manual work that you have to put into in briefings as well. So some great examples of how this is already starting to emerge. There's also a much bigger vision that we have in mind as well. You would have maybe heard from Peter Kyle, our Secretary of State for the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology recently. He participated in a general debate a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke about the fact that we must manage our public sector data as a national strategic resource, bringing coherence to where there was chaos, helping to really start to drive better coordination away from confusion. And this is all about having a national data library. It's about how we can unlock public sector data assets to be able to kickstart the UK economy, to be able to drive innovation with AI into startups and into researchers and into the private sector. And there's a real focus on how we're going to do that, maximizing the value of data for public good and really helping to drive an AI-powered public service ecosystem that the public deserve. And so, Secretary of State has a really big, bold vision for this going forward. And you'll be hearing a lot more about the National Data Library as we start to launch this up as a key initiative that goes across government in the future as well. Okay. I hope that's been helpful as a bit of a tour through some of the opportunity we have, the challenges we have to overcome, some of the things that we can get right as we start to open up data ecosystems across government, as we start to fuel AI with data, and as we start to lean into some really big ambitions like the National Data Library. I would encourage us all to continue to do 4 things as we continue to progress as a collaborative set of people and communities. The first is we have to continue to have public trust at the heart of what we do. We need to continue to have open discourse in all of our conversations. We need to have strong collaboration and coordination. We need to continue to talk as a community and make sure that we're continuing to be connected together, focusing on common goals. We have to think big. We have to have a strong vision, but knowing that we'll be flexible on how we get to that, because things will change as we go. And we have to start with the focus and start focusing on high priority areas where we can show value and then continuing to iterate as we drive transformation across the public sector. And finally, we have to have autonomy with uniformity. We can't create bottlenecks in innovation. We need to have everybody doing innovation in every team. So there should be autonomy in innovation, but there needs to be uniform standards. We need to think about security, privacy, ethics, quality, the list goes on, in a more uniform way so we all have best practice high bar standards, even though we're doing innovation in a very independent way. I hope this has been helpful, guys. Thank you again for squeezing me in for a quick slot. And I look forward to speaking to you all over the course of today as well, and look forward to some other great content from other speakers today. Thank you very much.